Well, Kylie, thanks for being on today. We'll start with this. When did you realize that you could make it as a competitive swimmer?
I feel like I grew up, I started swimming when I was 7, and I think immediately people kind of recognized I had like a feel for the water and talent. But I honestly wasn't really a big fan of doing all the hard practices and stuff. I think even when I was 12, 13 years old, I was still involved in a swim team, but I didn't really like going to practice every day. I don't know, I didn't really enjoy it that much. But then I quit for a year when I was a freshman in high school, and I came back because I missed it. And that was when I think it clicked to me that I was actually good at this and I actually wanted to be competitive. And yeah, I that was when I just started working a lot harder and really actually enjoying it. Was in
Did
high
you
school.
start? I don't know. I'm guessing a lot of people maybe start with like a neighborhood swim team. How did you start?
I think just like swim lessons. Actually, I
Okay.
started with my mom literally teaching us to kick with straight legs in my neighbor's swimming pool. And so I always had a really strong kick, so I think that's probably
Yeah.
why.
All right. So you're doing the swimming thing. So I guess your freshman year of high school, you don't even try out for the high school swim team then
No,
because
no,
you're
I
like
wasn't
going
in
to.
swimming.
And so why come back to it?
Um, so I have a twin sister, and she actually liked swimming a lot more than I did, and she really wanted to join the lifetime, literally the swim team, and I was like, oh yeah, I was kind of getting tired of, doing my own workouts. Like I didn't like running. There was not really
Mhm.
anything I really liked, and so this team literally had 4 people on it, and we just joined, and I don't know, it was just different this time. I just came back and all of a sudden it just like reignited a fire in me.
When did you realize that like you're actually really good at this?
Probably, I mean, coaches always told me, they were always telling me like I had talent and I knew I was good. Like I could keep up with anybody in practice really that I wanted. But it wasn't until junior year of college. So my family moved from one city to another in Colorado, and I joined a really good swim program that sent a lot of swimmers to like D1 colleges and stuff. And like I quickly became one of the top swimmers there, and my coach like sat me down and was like, you can basically swim wherever you want in college. And I had never even thought about the possibility of getting a swimming in D1 or like getting a scholarship. And I don't know, like I just made such great strides my sophomore, junior, and senior year. That was when I like kind of knew I was good at it. And I think it was really just coaches reminding me that I was good at it. And then also just having all of a sudden getting this like love for getting better and learning how
Mhm.
to improve my technique and learning that work if you work hard, chances are your times will like continue to improve.
Yeah.
So
You could go anywhere. You ultimately chose NC State, so why there?
yeah, it was kind of an interesting recruiting. Was really interesting because you're literally a high school student. You do
Mhm.
not know what you're doing. Your parents are trying to help you, but they don't really know that much about swimming. They don't really know your priorities. So it was really interesting going through that journey. And I ended up literally just picking 5 schools that were in the top 20 swimming schools. And NC State was one of my top ones because they were heavily recruiting me. They had really good relays. I love relays. That's like my favorite part of swimming was being on relay teams and doing great things with these other women and girls. But they also had a really good engineering program. Probably like of all the schools I was looking at, I was like, this is a great engineering school. I was somewhat interested in that at the time. And then I took a visit. I came out here with my dad, and again, I'm like a junior in high school. Don't really know what I'm doing, but I don't know. I felt at home here. So
All
yeah,
right. Now I have to ask. You have a twin sister. Successful NCAA championships. We're going to talk about. Did she swim in college, and how'd that go?
it's kind of funny because she's the one that made us join the sim team, and then a
Right.
year after, she was like, I don't like this anymore.
Okay.
And yeah, so she was done. Her career was over.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So you got NC State, and again, I'm just for those of us that aren't in the swim world. What's the season like for you? And like, was it like a big culture shock? I mean, I'm assuming obviously if you're really good in high school, that's one thing. But then now you're in Division One. Was there like a oh my goodness, like this talent level is a lot deeper? What was it like for you your first year?
Yeah, it was intimidating for sure. Even during the recruiting process, just seeing, some of the names that went through these programs, Olympians, and just seeing the caliber of these programs. And I think It was a little bit of a shock because it's your job. It's kind of like a job.
Yeah.
You go there and your life basically is swimming. But
Mm.
already in high school, I was training so much that the whole like training practice load wasn't honestly a ton different. I think it was maybe just more of an added level of intensity. Like the practices we did at NC State, every single one, like I went to failure. That didn't
Mm.
happen as much in high school. And then also the pressure, like the goals that you set at a top five, a top 10 program are to win a national championship or whatever. Like that pressure, made it seem like you had to do literally everything in that season to get that goal.
Yeah.
So it was definitely super intense and yeah,
Now,
definitely a transition.
obviously, a top high school swimmer. Was Olympics like ever a goal or dream for you?
Yeah, I mean I didn't like long course as much as short course, but I truly like I trained with people who were, vying for Olympic spots, and I thought that I could, maybe get there. I honestly didn't get as close as I wanted.
Mm.
I didn't make the 2016 Olympic trials, and then the 2020 got postponed to 2021,
Mm.
and then I made the semifinal in my best event there. So I was like the top 16, but I didn't end up getting that close. I was definitely like one of the top short course swimmers in the NCAA, but it just never really translated to the long course pool as well for me. I just was better at short course.
So, for those of us that aren't familiar, short course, long course, are you talking about
Yeah.
like how long the race
Yeah.
is, or how big the pool is, or
Need context. So in college, there is the training, the course is 25-yard pool.
okay?
What you see on the TV at the Olympics is a 50-meter pool. So it's over double the length. No, and if you're going at 50 meters, you don't even have a wall or anything, and you spend less time underwater, which is another like swimming term, or underwaters is dolphin kick is like one of the fastest things you can do. It's sometimes
Mm.
even faster than swimming. And so I was really good at the swimming underwater essentially, like with this dolphin kick. And so having less of that in a long course pool negatively affected me in that course.
So you're saying so in college it was 25 and
Yeah.
the Olympics is 50.
Yes.
Why is the standards different?
Honestly, that's a good question. I don't really know. I think it has to do with the fact that long course pools are very expensive to
Mm.
build, and in high school and stuff, like I rarely trained at a long course pool, and so I think that the kind of the standard format for a swimming pool at the amateur level, and
Mm.
and college is considered an amateur level, is the shorter pool. But
Okay.
it still is a course that, I mean, still plenty of Olympians came out of NCAA short
Right.
course formats. So
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, can you walk us through like a typical day of training, maybe during the season? Oh, for those of us that don't know, like what's it like to be a swimmer?
yeah, so you wake up probably at about 5:30 a.m. I would drive to the pool. Actually, I would drive to the weights facility, and I would do a lift for about an hour. We would lift weights, and then we would go straight to the pool and do like a 2-hour practice. And then after that, I would go home or go back to my dorm, eat, and then do my classes if I had them that day. And then at 2:30, like not even probably what is that? If I finish at 8, like yeah, 6 hours later, there's another practice I have to prepare for. So you show up early for that practice. It's another 2.5-ish hour practice. And then you go back home. I always had homework to do.
Right.
Do a few hours of homework, go to bed, and then the cycle. It was slightly different each day, and we didn't double. We didn't have two practices every single day, but most days we did. And then Saturday we would have like a literal like 4-hour practice. We would do dry land. We would do like another sort of exercise on land for an hour, and then swim for 3 hours. So we spent so much time
A-
training.
And what's the season length?
It's from you're competing from October. What is it? You're competing from October to March, but you start training in August. And also, swimming is a year-round sport, so we have our long course season in the summer. So I only took off like 2 to 3 weeks a year.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Any major injuries for you during your time?
I was actually really blessed to not have major ones. I had a couple of ones that I would consider minor. They bothered me a little bit. Like I had a minor back injury and then a couple of wrist injuries, but nothing that like took me out of the water. So, but I was very fortunate because it's very common in the sport to have some sort of major setback.
Yeah, I was curious. Like, what are the kind of the common swimming injuries?
Shoulders, especially for distance swimmers. It's just like the overuse, the rotator cuffs just sometimes go. Lots of people have hip issues, knee issues. I don't know. Really, just it comes down to like at one point maybe you're training a little bit too hard and then you push it for too long and then it's like an overuse sort of a thing.
Yeah.
But I was always very careful about not getting one of those and very like communicative when I felt something like that happening.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm curious what the culture of swimming is like. Because, I mean, when you're swimming on a school team, whatever, I mean, you have like your individual events and then you have like the relays where you're together.
yeah.
So there's just like, you want your teammates to do good, but you don't want them to do too good because then that's like not good for you. Like, what's that dynamic like?
Um, yeah, I mean, obviously in practice, we're all competing with each other and stuff, but I think the really cool thing about the NCAA meet and just that season as a whole um, and this is actually a difference between club swimming or high school swimming that I didn't really talk about earlier, but it is so team focused. And so honestly, like obviously it's like you have your teammates, you're competitive with them, but at the end of the day, you had to get a certain amount of points in order to beat the other teams at NCAAs. So your individual points mattered, your relay points mattered, and I think that's actually the biggest strength of NCAA swimming is that like it's swimming is a pretty individual sport. Like you're not on a soccer field like passing the ball to someone else. You're just
Right.
swimming your own race, but I always felt like it was a team sport because I knew that every single point that I could get, every single person I could beat was something that would help us achieve those goals. And that was always so much more gratifying to me and more motivating for me to reach those team goals than even honestly my individual goals. And I think a lot
Yeah.
of people felt the same way.
Now you had some success. So you won a couple of NCAA championships. Can you explain what that was like, what it felt like, and what it is that you won?
Yep. So yeah, I had a lot of success at NC State. Improved a lot. I was 31-time All-American, and then 2-time NCAA champion. And those NCAA champion relays were definitely the highlights of my entire career. I honestly thought I was always a dream of mine. When I came to college, I like remember this being a dream of mine was the highest thing I could achieve was winning on a relay. That honestly meant more to me than winning an individual title. I don't know why. I just like dreamed about it.
Yeah.
And so and our program had never won an NCAA title in anything. So I think it was like
Huh.
an extra chip on our shoulders. Like we wanted to win something. So in 2021, it was actually the year after COVID, we just were going for it, and we weren't even a top seed or anything, but we came from the outside and we won this relay, and it was amazing. I even before I dove in for my leg, so I was the third leg, I was the butterfly swimmer. I literally remember we were pretty far ahead, and I literally remember like feeling like exhilarated because I knew we had a shot, and I still remember that moment. So
So I mean, this is like other than the Olympics, this is like the peak of your sport.
yeah,
So
it
when you
is.
guys won, is it? Do you say gold in college, first place?
No, you just say NCAA or national championship
Okay,
or
when you
national title.
like when the fourth person hit the thing and you guys were in first place, what was that like for you?
It was amazing. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it because first of all, the time was under the NCAA record at the time. So it was like almost like, oh my gosh, is that real? Like, did we just do that? And then um I don't know, my teammates and I, we were just hugging each other, and it was kind of a weird meet because of the COVID restrictions, first of all, you had to have like a lane between each team to like
Wow.
because of the restrictions, and then also the coaches weren't on the side of the pool, they were in the stands.
Hmm.
So we just like immediately like looked to our coaches who were just like jumping up and down and hugging each other because we realized like that was the first NCAA title that our program had ever won, and like we
Wow.
did it in a record. So it
And you
was
did it.
awesome.
not once but twice. So 2 different years, or
It was the same year, and so we
okay,
did it in the
that makes.
400 medley relay, and then a couple days later in the 200 medley relay. So,
Oh, that's incredible.
yeah,
Now, what do you like individually get for winning? Like I know, do you get anything
yeah.
yourself?
So you get like this plaque. I should have brought it with me to show, but you literally just get like a wood trophy, and it says like NCAA champion. And you get a wood plaque if you're top 8 in any of your events. So I got them for a lot of different races, but
Yeah,
obviously that one meant the most.
yeah. Now, was it hard for you? Because your last year swimming was what?
2023 was my last month or
So
last.
was it hard? I guess those next 2 years not being able to repeat that success, or
Yeah,
what was that?
it was really hard because we got second in the tournament
Oh
in
man,
those medley relays both years after, and this it was actually Virginia. They just kept beating us, and it was really. I remember being like devastated the next year when we got second. And it's like we literally went a best time in it. We were literally under our previous record, but it was just so hard. Like our standard was winning, and I think
mm,
that's just one of the things about sports is like that success. This feeling of success is really it is so fleeting. Like
yeah,
one year I was thrilled about the time. The next year it was like I was like crying about it. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And imagine too, all that school structure practice when you finished and you graduated. I mean, what was the transition like to go from doing all that all the time to to not having that anymore?
Like when I was completely done.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think by the end of my career, like my body was pretty done.
Mm,
I think the demands of swimming is like it was a lot. It took like a lot on me, and I think after my senior year was when I started to really like I could just really couldn't keep up with the demands. So I think at first it was like a little bit of a sense of relief, like I don't my body can like rest now. But obviously you kind of you've been living for these team goals. Your life has your my lifestyle had been centered around
right.
swimming from my sophomore year of high school to my 5th year of college. And so that was it was like really it was hard to kind of transition. All of a sudden it's like a couple months later I'm working a full-time job, and it's just like so wildly different working in corporate America versus being in an
Right.
exhilarating team. um, and it's been good. Like I feel adjusted now, but it was definitely hard to go from one side to the other.
Do,
You
do,
go from being like celebrated as like an
mm,
NC champion to like no one really knows who you like you're just another worker at your workplace. So
yeah. Do you miss swimming at all?
um yeah, I mean I've always loved the sport. I didn't like leave on a bad terms with the sport or anything. I college swimming, looking back, was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done.
Mm,
Like, I don't know if I would want to repeat that experience just because it really was so hard, and
yeah.
there were a lot of sacrifices that I made, and I didn't even realize I was making for the sport. But I still swim like once a week. I have a outdoor pool like really close to my house, and
Mm,
I swim and I love it. Like I think it's a great sport. So.
yeah. What was like the hardest thing for you as a swimmer, like during your time?
Um, I think it was the pressure. I really struggled with the amount of pressure that you place on yourself, your team places on you
Mm,
when you're at that level. And obviously, I was one of the top performers on the team, but my performance kind of plateaued and then level or kind of started going down after my junior year. And it was just really hard for me to kind of like cope with that and handle the pressures and expectations I had on myself. And I think also from just like a purely physical perspective, I think the physical demands of training 20 plus hours a week, it's not really like I honestly look back and I'm like that wasn't really like healthy for me.
mm,
Like it really you really do sacrifice even your health to get to that
yeah.
level. So
What do you know? Like, what is like the peak age for swimmers?
um well, it's hard to say because like college swimming is where most people peak because that's just
Right.
kind of how the structure of it in the academic model. But I've seen, swimmers in Europe and even just American swimmers like continue to go best times into their late 20s.
Hmm.
And I think that's like, marathon runners and stuff, they peak in their 30s and stuff. So I don't know. I don't know. I guess I don't really have a good answer for that.
Yeah.
But for me, I peaked when I was like 21, so pretty
So you
young.
mentioned that, your times weren't, I guess when your times weren't improving, junior year struggle, like, yeah, how did you process that? Was it like physically tiring? Like, what were you thinking, at least at the time, of like, why are my times stuck? Why are they plateaued?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I think my first thing was like, oh, it's just like a mental block or whatever, and so you just got to push harder, push harder. So it's like I try to approach it really from every angle, mental, like trying to get like physical help, trying to be more communicative with my coaches, being like, my body's not recovering, like I need more recovery. Um, and it's not like my times like plummeted or anything. I just stopped improving. I just didn't have the energy that I did the first 4 years. So I was just a lot of like communication with my coaches, and that was really when I think my friendships took, like, I really leaned a lot on my friends.
Mm.
And I think I think when you're doing well in swimming or doing well in your sport, and it's, I hate to say it, like, at the time I was like, oh, I'm not idolizing my sport, but I was idolizing my sport, and it was easy to kind of let my success in the pool like dictate how I felt as a person.
Yeah.
But when that kind of like started to taper off, I feel like that was when I truly started to like lean on my friends. And honestly, it was like actually a really pivotal point in just even my walk with God to go through that.
Mm. Yeah.
So yeah.
Now, speaking of like energy and trying to keep up with it, sometimes you're watching the swimming on the Olympics, and I get it maybe if you're like Michael Phelps, whatever, and you've won a bajillion gold medals. But sometimes I see these swimmers, and I know some of it is you got to be exhausted, but they'll swim and then they touch the thing, they turn around and they find out they won gold, and like there's like no emotion. They just like dap up the person next to them, give the other person a hug, and I'm like, you
Yeah.
just freaking won the gold medal. Like, why are you
Yeah.
not like going crazy? Can you explain that to non-swimmers? Like, I'm always surprised by that. This the
Yeah.
nonchalantness of I
I
just
think
won a
that
gold
is
medal.
that is a great question, and I've seen it too. And I can't speak for what's going through those swimmers' brains, but if I had to guess, I think one thing is there's a good chance that that time was slower than what they wanted to go. As much as I hate to say it, as much as from an outside perspective, you shouldn't care what time you went as long as you won. That is like just the pressure that we put ourselves on the sport. Like that second NCAA title that we won, I was celebrating with my teammates, but me personally, my swim wasn't that good. So it was like a
Mm.
little bit of like, it was a little bit of a gut punch to like, it was hard to fully celebrate it. And looking back, obviously I wish I would have celebrated more, but
Yeah.
that could be part of it. It could just be shock. Maybe they like don't believe they went that. They like, and then also maybe it's just like they don't, that's just not how they express their emotions, or it's like a delayed
Yeah.
response. But
Yeah.
that's
No,
my best guess.
that's fascinating. And
Yeah.
speaking of, one of the things that that's unique about a sport like swimming is like you're practicing all the time, but you only get one shot. It's not like a basketball game where you got 60 minutes or whatever. It's like you go and you swim and like that's it. Is maybe you're used to it or not? I don't know, but like is there like a lot of pressure knowing that like I've done all this training and now I get to swim one time and like
Yeah.
this counts for everything. How do swimmers handle that?
I mean, that was hard for me because I'm a sprinter. My race literally lasts like 21 seconds. And it's like I've trained 8 months to literally
Yeah.
hopefully go down and back in 21 seconds. And yeah, it's hard. It is a ton of pressure, no matter what distance you are. But I think as a sprinter, I just felt it a lot because I knew that not only did my training have to be perfect, but like I had to execute the race perfectly. If I messed up my
Yeah.
start, my turn, like it was over. I probably wouldn't make a final or something. But I think that's something that you just learn to do when you learn to control what you control. You learn to visualize your race, and you learn that like you just learn how to mentally prepare for these things as you get better at it. And I think by the end of my career, it was like I kind of knew what I was going to do in that race, and I knew that if I messed up, like I was going to be okay.
Yeah.
Um, so,
Do you feel more pressure when you race like your own individual race or when you're doing like a relay?
oh, that's a good question. Um, really depends. I always swam way better on relays, so I feel like that would mean that I'm putting less pressure on myself. But I cared way more about the relays, so I don't know. I had a lot more fun on relays though, so I don't know. I think they honestly they were all high pressure, so I think that's why
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time
Yeah.
distinguishing.
Yeah.
Everything was
Um,
make or break.
yeah. And then what was it like your last race? Was it at the NCAA's? I'm not sure how it works for college. What was it like when you like were getting prepared for and then like you got out of the pool for the last time for you?
It was kind of surreal, honestly. Yeah, I'm just thinking about it right now. I feel like I was kind of in shock. Like I feel like I couldn't believe that was actually my last race. Like that was the last race that I'll ever swim. But I had so it was a relay, so I was the second leg. So the first swimmer had already
Mm.
swam. I swam, but then I had to wait for my other two teammates to finish. So kind of in that time, I was like, wow, I'm done. And then my teammates and I like all hugged, and we went up on the podium, and my coaches and I all hugged. I don't know. It felt like a pretty uh good, like it wasn't the best ending that it wasn't the ending that I hoped for, but I felt like a lot of closure in that. I felt like in that moment, like no, like this is when I'm it is time to be done. I've
Yeah.
given this sport like all I had. So
Yeah. Now you the last couple of years, I- for even those that aren't in the swimming world have heard about the transgender issues with sports. A lot of it came in the swimming world with Leah Thomas
mhm.
from Penn University. Is that
Yeah,
the?
yeah, you can.
Um, so can you explain? Well, first let me start this way. What are the because there's what people can say publicly and then what's actually being discussed like behind closed doors, like swim teams. What's the conversations like for you guys the last couple of years when this started to gain a lot of more steam and traction?
Yeah, so I want to make this a long story short, but like the backstory. Do you want me to share the backstory of like how we found out about this and stuff?
Go for it.
So in the 2021 to 2022 season, like we learned that there was a swimmer, Leah Thomas, never heard the name before. This swimmer is like literally getting these insane times in dual meets in the beginning of the season. Never heard the name before. Do my research, realize that Will Thomas was a swimmer on the UPenn men's swimming team the previous 3 years. So like that was a giveaway. Like obviously, like Leah Thomas, this man is being allowed to train and compete in our league. And I think at first I was like a little bit shocked. I
Mm,
never really heard about the situation happening, and I was like, why is this being allowed? Like, is there a glitch in the system? Like, what is going on? And I really didn't think it was going to affect me because I was like, there's no way that the NCAA is going to allow this. Like, this is so obviously
right.
wrong. Like, his best times are literally faster than all the women's records. Like, this is there should be no argument or question that this needs to stop. And I think my teammates felt similarly. Sorry. And so the season kind of just goes on, and he's still putting up these crazy times, and I'm starting to get more and more worried. But I think generally the whole time I was like, there's no way that I'm gonna have to race him at the NCAAs. Like that's such a big meet, and at this
Mhm.
point it was like all over the news.
Yeah.
I thought because swimming is kind of a small bubble, I thought that maybe it's just a big deal in the swimming bubble, but it was a big news for American society as a whole, honestly.
Yeah.
Everybody was kind of watching the NCAA and seeing what they were going to do. And so yeah, the conversations I feel like got more frustrated as the meet drew closer. Like all of a sudden it's like I'm feeling like panicked because I'm like, am I gonna are my teammates not gonna be able to make the meet because he's in
Mm,
their races? Like why is the NCAA not saying anything? Like we keep waiting for a response to them from them. Why, like what is going on? And then obviously ultimately ended up in actually having to go to that meet and compete and everything with him.
Yeah. Now, um, is some of his titles been stripped, or no, not yet?
I don't think so,
Okay.
not yet.
I'm not sure how the executive order stuff and all that stuff changes
Yeah.
it. So you are involved with in a lawsuit
Yes.
with what's going on there, and what is it?
Yes. So I've been kind of involved in this issue as a whole since really right after I graduated was when I decided to get involved. And it really started with just sharing my story of like what it was like to be at that
Mm.
NCAA's. And, you know, obviously I had to not only compete against him but I also like the locker room situation was like something that I don't think the average fan or person that
Mm.
wasn't at that meet like is something that you would think about is the fact that we had to share a locker room with man and the fact that the literal rules of they changed the rules of the entire facility to make
Mm.
bathrooms gender neutral for the specific purpose of allowing him in there just like blatant disregard and so I started speaking out about just my experience, and I just literally got connected with someone who had connections in Capitol Hill, and literally went to Capitol Hill and just like talked about it. It went from 0 to 100. I was not expecting to do like any sort of big media or anything. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into, and I'm not someone who likes being in the public eye.
Mm.
But I just did it, and ever since I've been kind of like somewhat involved. I work full time. I don't have that much free time, but when I can, I'm really passionate about bringing awareness to this issue. And so the latest thing is the lawsuit where you may have heard of Riley Gaines, but she's
Hmm.
kind of the leading
Yeah.
voice in this, and she was at that meet. And so her and I
Because
think it was
she
like
came second place. Is that correct, or something like that? Third.
she tied with Leah Thomas
Okay.
for
Good. Yeah, because she's in a picture.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
crazy story. Um, like down to the 100th. Um,
Mm.
and then she had to stand on the podium,
Yeah.
no trophy in hand, that he had to hold it because that was the image that had to be portrayed for obvious reasons. But anyways, so we all kind of there's been a lot of organizations backing us, and there's one organization, and it's been time for a lawsuit for a while. Like the NCAA still has not like taken any sort of responsibility. Even
Right.
after the executive order, they haven't really taken any responsibility, even from that. And so the lawsuit is something that we're really pushing, and I feel very confident that we will have a breakthrough and that the NCAA will finally be held accountable for what they allowed. But yeah.
So in this lawsuit, if you guys like quote unquote win, like what happens, or what's the goal?
Well, the biggest goal is literally for the NCAA to own up to what they allowed. They have been allowing men and women's sports, and they they claim to champion women's sports,
Yeah.
and they've been doing the opposite of that. So the first thing is to literally just take responsibility, change their policies, be as clear as they possibly can be clear about the fact that men will never be allowed in women's sports, and like that is the most important thing. And then obviously like I think an apology of sorts as well to those who have been affected. People who there's this girl in the lawsuit who literally in her last swim of her entire career she got 17th. So the top 16 make the final. She got 17th because he was in her race, and he won it actually. And obviously that's a wrong that needs to be right. Like she was an All-American.
Yeah.
He was not a women's national champion. He was a man. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm assuming like I've imagined like during the NCAA's where he's swimming, they're just not saying anything to you guys. Or are they like straight up ignoring you guys? I mean, what was that like? What was happening there?
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. It was such a crazy experience because we were just so silenced. I felt so powerless by the time I got to the meet. The NCAA had never, our the NCAA coaches, school administrations, they had never even given us the opportunity to have like a voice in the matter or say
Mm.
anything about it. Like their tactic, and this varied by school, but tactics ranged from just complete silence to like trying to force their athletes to go to like pronoun training sessions, like counseling, where they were the ones that were crazy. Like there were so many different tactics kind of being used to kind of send the message that like you're just gonna put up with this, and you're just gonna like go to this meet and you're just gonna act like it's fine and normal. But it wasn't fine and normal. It was really troubling to watch him win that 500 free. Like I was literally on the sidelines. Like I felt sick to my stomach. I literally couldn't believe that there were so many people. Like I couldn't believe that I was at a meet where I'm racing like Olympians, and obviously this is not okay at any level, but this was in so much of the public eye, and no one was doing anything to stop it. No one was publicly saying like this is wrong. No one was. At the end of the day, like we were the victims. Like the women at that meet, we were like the victims. We were the most powerless in the situation.
Yeah.
And we obviously all still wanted to do like compete for our teams and stuff, and get our, and like you've trained. The previous year was canceled, or sorry, it was 2 years prior was canceled. So a lot of us had already lost at NCAAs. Like we didn't want to lose to another one to like boycotting. So we were really put between a rock and a hard place. And then obviously the locker room situation was a whole experience in itself. So
yeah, and it's so frustrating to read about it because the media, ESPN, they talk about like transgender issues, and it's not just transgender issues. It's men and women's sports.
Yeah,
because women don't swim men's sports or any sport. I mean, they don't do that.
Yeah.
So it's not transgender issues blanket. It's men competing in women's sports. And it's so like, frustrating for me too. It's like, man, as a man, it's like all the men that like are okay with this and allow it to go on and like think it's okay. I mean, like this past year, I think it was San Jose State volleyball had a transgender man, woman, playing, and like a bunch of schools, to your point, did actually forfeit their games. And then I was reading, I'm like, how does this even work? Apparently some of the teammates were like upset about on San Jose State were upset. And I'm like, how do you compete if of course the coach is like defending it. And it's like, I don't know. I don't like the phrase like, when people say like on the right side of history, because I'm like, that's so stupid. I mean, 1942 Germany, you would have thought being a Nazi was on the right side of history. And as a follower of Jesus, like popular opinion and sentiment doesn't make things right or wrong. But I'm like, even then, and of course now, it's like, it's so obvious where this is going. Like 10 years from now, everyone's going to be like, you idiots. Yeah. And I'm like, even now, it's like, what? It doesn't take a lot of, I don't think at this point, a lot of, courage to be like, hey, we should stop doing this. And yet people are still slow to do it.
Yeah.
It's just very baffling to me. And I imagine as a woman athlete, it's even more so.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's been interesting I feel like the tides have turned in the last 2 years. Like when this first happened, like no one was speaking out. I know there was that girl, she wrote a letter to the NCAA, but other than Riley, like even from like a swimming perspective, I was like processing the experience. I was like too scared to speak out. And then now it's like we have so many women that are like part of this lawsuit, and so many that are like, no, like what are we doing? Like this is wrong. Like, yeah. It's also given me an appreciation for free speech and the fact that we have free speech. And it maybe for a moment I felt like I didn't have a voice in the matter, but like we live in America, like we can speak about this.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. I mean, look back over your time as a swimmer in your career. If you could like go give like Kylee advice for like entering freshman year of NC State, what would you tell her?
I don't know. This is probably like really unconventional advice, but I would say like if you're a D1 athlete, if you've made it to that level, like if you have a seat at the table, like that's something to be proud of. I think I came in with the idea that, I hadn't proven myself, like I hadn't proven my worth or anything. But now that I'm out of sports, people people find out that you were a D1 athlete or that you were an athlete in college, and like they think it's so cool. Like your employers, this, that, like it is a cool experience, and it didn't really matter what accolades I got from that experience. Like I went through the same training as if I hadn't accomplished anything. Like I did the same amount of work, if that makes sense. And I think I would just tell myself to like enjoy the experience and like yeah, don't be like too hard on myself because I think that took a lot of joy out of the experience was the amount of pressure that I put on myself.
Yeah, for sure.
And obviously it helped me get better, so it's not like all bad, but
Right.
yeah.
Now, these last Olympics, 2024, did you know any of the swimmers? Had you competed against any of them?
Yeah. Kate Douglas, do you remember her?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we competed a lot in college. We always like swam the same events. She always beat me at the NCAA level or at the NCAA meet by a good bit. But there was one dual meet that I somehow ended up beating her in the three events that we both swam.
All
That
right.
was kind of cool. But
Yeah.
I mean, she's amazing. She just kept getting better and better. So like she's untouchable now. But
Yeah.
that was really cool. But yeah, there were a couple others too.
And I'm assuming NIL probably doesn't affect swimming too much, or maybe for like the high Olympic level athletes, is it helpful for them? Maybe they can take some income, or
So
how's it?
it's interesting. I think the rules are changing as we speak, but from what I've heard, it really depends. First of all, the school that you're in and how much money they make from football. So SEC gets a lot more money for NIL
Mm,
than ACC. But I do think that yeah, swimmers are getting NIL money from their schools, depending on how much their schools make and how much like the that school prioritizes swimming. Swimming isn't a revenue sport, so it's really like
right.
at the mercy of whatever the administrative side decides. But and it also depends on the school that you're at. But I think it's interesting because I think it's really going to change the landscape of swimming as far as I've heard. So
And like in what ways?
I think you're going to see swimmers, or I think you're going to see some schools really that don't get a lot of money from football. That
Mm,
they're really going to struggle because they're not going to be able to give those recruits as much athletic money, or sorry, as much NIL money,
yeah.
than like an SEC school who has all this extra money that they can just funnel down to the swimming team. And it's like if you're choosing to go to a college and one college offers you $100,000 and one college offers you nothing, like which one are you going to go to? Even if the other one would maybe even be a better fit team wise and school wise and coach wise, you're gonna like it's gonna be hard to turn that down. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting.
Would you change any if you were NCAA commissioner for swimming for college athletics? Is it what would you change if anything?
I mean, obviously, no men and women's sports,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I actually don't think that I really have enough knowledge, or I don't know if I have like enough knowledge to even say what I would change because I
Mm,
think it's really nuanced. And even the NIL stuff, like I can see positives to it. I can see the positive to, you know, Tim Tebow is going through college and like they're making so much money off of his name, but he doesn't get any of it. Like I can see the
right.
positive of that, but I can also see the negative of giving an 18-year-old like $1 million a year and then they graduate and it's like they're never going to be making that type of money again. So I think I would probably just research and explore like what boundaries NIL needs and what would be
Yeah.
healthiest for the athletes.
Yeah. And speaking of, again, I know we've talked about this a little bit, the men and women's sports. Has there been any, I mean, I know you're not swimming anymore. Has there been any, like, have you gotten any pushback or people don't, the average person doesn't really know the lawsuits going on. But since you've kind of joined this lawsuit, spoke out about the stuff, has there been any challenges for you personally?
Yeah, it was really hard to speak out the first time. I it was one of the most terrifying things I've ever done because I didn't know the response that I would get. I'm very grateful. I have a great support system. My family was so supportive. My friends were so supportive. And honestly, it was more positive than I was expecting. I think if you go online, it's very easy to find like a lot of hate from people who are like hiding behind like a username or like
Right.
like an account. Um, but that really honestly for me was the worst of it. And I think people have experienced various levels of like harassment or whatever. But I really didn't get very much of that. So I was grateful. It was honestly like better than I was expecting. I knew I couldn't please everyone by speaking
Right.
out about this. Like it's a contentious topic in our society, but I was grateful to like the amount of like coaches that reached out to me, the amount of just random people that like reached out to me when I started speaking out about it, like made me realize like how many people are really appreciative and they care about the fact that, this is a big issue to just Americans and society as a whole. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, as a swimmer, I know there's like a lot of gear involved. I'm sure you maybe got a lot at NC State. For those of us thinking that aren't swimmers that don't know, like the bathing suits, the goggles, that sort of stuff, is that like really really expensive? Like, what's that like? And as an athlete, at least at NC State, do they cover that for you?
Yeah. Yeah, everything is covered. It's pretty nice. You get like it's like we call it Christmas every year. Like it's like in the first month of the season. So everybody they give you like sweatsuits and shorts and stuff. And we were sponsored by Adidas. So I was really looking forward to the shoes that they would give us for if you made NCAAs. And I literally still wear them to this day. Like they're these like white Ultra Boosts that glow in the dark actually. But yeah, so the most expensive things that they got us though were our racing suits. So these are these like super nice suits. I mean, you just buy them for your like big meets of the year, and I bought them in high school, but they're like four or $500,
Oh
and they
goodness.
would give us one for like every. They would give us like at least two a year.
But you
So
you saying you don't use them more than once?
well, you use them for like one meet, and you can use them for more, but they would just give us a new one every big meet that we went to. So
Why, and why they get like
yeah, they
not
they
as
wear
good?
out because
Okay.
they're super thin and super fragile, and the
Okay.
chlorine kind of like eats away at them. And so yeah, I mean, it was just like pretty standard that you would get a new one for every meet. Um, but yeah, so
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if I'm remember this correctly. Did was it? Am I remember this correctly? A couple years ago, maybe it was before the Summer Olympics. They were talking about swimsuits and some of them being legal and not being legal.
yeah, yeah.
Like what's going on there?
It was something with the so there was the Michael Phelps super suit era, and he broke like all of these world records, and he was basically wearing a suit that I think it had rubber or something in it. It basically made the swimmers like float. And because of the materials it was made out of. So after that meet, the like governing bodies were like these suits are not fair, like we can't like this is becoming a more of a competition of who can make the best swimsuit better
Hmm.
more than like actual athletic ability. So then they put like restrictions on what is a legal swimsuit or whatever, and it has to have some sort of criteria. It can't like help you float, but
So are his like records safe now since he had like extra special gear?
well, that's the thing is like these records were broken in I think 2008, and just now, like almost
Oh
20 years
jeez.
later, they're finally starting to get broken. So because swimming is just getting faster in general, but yeah, it's taken a while, and it literally was because obviously he was a like one of the most talented swimmers, but then he
Right.
also got this extra boost of this like
Yeah.
uh, illegal swimsuit. So
Yeah, so being good at swimming involves two things that I don't particularly like. It sounds like you got to do a lot of early mornings. I mean, that's just a
yeah.
given. And then also, like, you got to be cold. You got to be jumping in these cold pools. And then maybe after a while, you warm up because you've been swimming a little bit. But, like, is that like every morning, your 5 a.m. alarm goes off and, like, I got to get up and I got to freeze?
No, it was all well, I had like the hardest time getting out of bed in the mornings. And the only thing that got me out was telling myself you can take a nap later. And yeah, the cold pool was also a really hard part of it. But I think that part you kind of get used to. You're like, okay, I'm gonna be in shock for like 30 seconds and then I'll start warming up. I think by far it was way harder to just wake up at
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes in high school I would wake up at like 4 o'clock because of the time that we got slotted. It's kind of crazy.
Oh, that's brutal. Especially that, like, because how important sleep is to performance. You know,
Yeah.
you really got to sleep. Um, yeah. You mentioned too a little bit about your faith journey. What's it like that being a follower of Jesus as a Division I athlete in the swimming world in particular? Is there a lot of Christians? Is it kind of not talked about much? What's it like for you?
Yeah, I mean, as much as like I look back on my career and it was there was a lot of heartache and stuff, but I just see how like God used the sport of swimming to help me get to know him better. And
Mm.
like he used it to I think I think he used it to allow me to understand the gospel better. And by the end of my career, like I realized that the way that my identity was in my performance, and that this kind of need to kind of work for approval of, coaches, the team or whatever. Like it was kind of I kind of was, what is the word? I was kind of was doing the same thing in my spiritual life. I was kind of viewing God
Mm.
as the same way. And I was also kind of conflating. I was conflating the two. And I kind of, at some points, even thought that, like, if I wasn't pleasing God, like, I would swim bad in my races, which is kind of crazy to say now because that's obviously so contrary to the
Yeah.
gospel. But I think that's actually a very common idea in the sports world and for Christians in the sports world. But the gospel is the antidote to that
Mm.
performance identity.
Yeah.
And it was something that I clung to, especially as things like started to kind of get worse in my career. The
Mm.
more that I like clung to the idea of unconditional love and Jesus, and realizing that like I actually am too weak to like work for like love. Like I am too weak. Um, and so that's actually like this is how I got so close to with my friends too.
Mm.
Like my freshman year, I didn't really have like community and Christian community. And Olivia Fisher, from church,
Mm.
she just kept like inviting me to this Bible study, and I was a Christian the whole time, but I don't know why, I just like never went.
Yeah.
But as I got older and I didn't really understand the importance of community as a Christian, like God just brought these teammates around me, and they came and they reminded me of the gospel in my hardest moments when I was
Mm.
like, why am I like, this is so painful? And I don't know, it's just like I look back and I really do see God's hand in all of that. And also just realizing that like sports can become an idol like overnight. And I don't know if I was ever to truly let go in my career. Looking
Mm.
back, like I don't think I ever truly was able to let go. And um but God in his grace, like he was still able to use that experience, even in my pride, even in my unwillingness to let go, he was still able to use that experience to like reveal himself to me. So
Yeah. Now, as a former swimmer, I don't know if you watch swimming all the time, but I'm sure you at least watch probably the Olympic trials and the Olympics. Um, can you just casually watch it? Do you get nervous? I mean, what's it like to watch swimming as a swimmer?
yeah, me and Olivia were talking about this during the Olympics, because actually we were talking about this during the Olympic trials because I was watching it and I got the bug. I was like, I want to go train for the next Olympic trials. I want to be there. That looks like so much fun. And she was like, Kylie, you were there. Like you literally could have had fun. And I was like, oh, you're right. Like, no, that was actually not really that fun. And they call it the meat of tears, the Olympic
Mm.
trials. And honestly, the Olympics is about the same way. I mean, you're literally watching like one wedding and a bunch of
Mm.
funerals. Like only one person gets the gold, and all those
And
people.
half the people that get gold aren't even happy because they didn't get the time they wanted. So
Exactly. Like it's really not. Yeah. So yeah, I get mixed feelings watching it. I am not jealous of the nerves and pressure that I know that they're feeling. Obviously, it's a dream of every person, and I know people who have been to it, and it is a super cool experience. But yeah, once you're in the sport, you're like you see it for what it really is, and it's not
yeah,
all glamorous.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Now, you mentioned your friend Olivia. You and Olivia have a podcast that you started recently called what's it called? I don't want to get it wrong.
It's called Washed Up, and we just changed it. It's Washed Up with Kylie and Olivia because there's
Washed up.
apparently
I
more
mean,
than one Washed Up.
well, I mean, washed up. I thought because like the athlete washed up. There's other ones?
There's other people that they are like retired D1 athletes. None of them are
Yeah.
swimmers, so I feel like ours is
Okay.
the best. But
Yeah. So you guys, what do you guys tell me about the show? What do you guys talk about?
yeah, so this is kind of us recording our conversations that we've had, since being done with swimming. And I talked about performance identity earlier, and that our conversations about that are something that we wish that we had when we were going through the sport. I feel like there's a lot of uh, just even like the Christian narrative is like, like kind of, I don't know, it just doesn't really push the gospel. And at least that's what we felt when we were in it. So I don't know. We just kind of we felt like led to start a podcast and just talk about our experience and what God taught us when we were swimming. And it's been cool because we've been able to kind of branch out into different topics, but it's the same message. And so, yeah, you can find, we are just starting. We are amateur podcasters, emphasis on amateur because we literally just finally got 2 mics, but it's been fun to just kind of like have these conversations about what God has taught us.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Kylee, I appreciate your time and also just the courage, you do it as you're trying to fight these lawsuits, for women to have fair play in their own sports. As we end here, if you want to connect with you online or find the podcast, where can they go?
You can go to washedup.pod on Instagram. Washed Up with Kylee and Olivia on Spotify or Apple. And then, I'll leave it there because that's what's important. But
all right. Well, check them out there. Olivia, thanks for the time, and I really appreciate the conversation.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.